Key political figures in our relationship with Afghanistan are our Prime Minister Gordon Brown and the Afghan President Hamid Karzai. They'll both be at the conference tomorrow. So we thought it'd be interesting to get them together to face a group of British and Afghan students in Downing Street. Lise Doucette seems to spend half her life in Kabul, so she's the ringmistress.
We're in this elegant 18th century room. It's called the Pillared Room, at the very heart of British government. We're here to discuss one of the most crucial issues of our time. It affects everyone in this room today and millions of people around the world. It's the war in Afghanistan. Here, for the first time in this kind of forum, we're very pleased to have two men who make some key decisions in this war. Prime Minister Gordon Brown and the Afghan President Hamid Karzai. The leaders will take questions from our audience, made up of students from the UK and from Afghanistan. The Afghan students are all studying at British universities, but the students have a lot of questions, so let's get started. Tirana Wafi, you're from Afghanistan. What's your question?
Recent polls show that majority of Afghan people are against talks with Taliban, and this is because they're concerned about their freedoms and about their rights. What guarantees do you have that the return of Taliban in any form will not undermine the social, political, and economic freedoms of Afghan people, and my freedoms as an Afghan woman to be able to go back and effectively work for my country?
President Karzai, you say you want to talk to the Taliban, but the Taliban say they don't want to talk to you. Is it going to work?
Well, we will continue to seek peace in Afghanistan using all the means that are available to us. The offer of talks to the Taliban goes to those who are not part of Al-Qaeda or other terrorist networks, who have accepted the Afghan constitution, who will accept the Afghan constitution, and who will return to a normal, peaceful life in Afghanistan in accordance with the Afghan constitution, benefiting from it as all other Afghan citizens do. Given that, it means our social reform, our progress towards the future, where you can come and contribute to your country, will not be affected.
To weaken the Taliban, you divide them. And you offer those people who are prepared to renounce violence, who are prepared to join the democratic process, who are prepared to say that they will have nothing to do with terrorism, a way out. And that is something that we will do, and something that President Karzai wants to do. But anybody who clings to violence, to terrorism, to the motives of Al-Qaeda, would not be acceptable as any part of that process.
Prime Minister, is it the business of the West to get involved in what happens to Afghan women?
Yes, I think we've got to speak out for human rights everywhere. Look, there were no women, no girls in school. There are now about 2 million girls, I understand, able now to go to school. Women's rights must continue to be increased in Afghanistan, girls' rights and women's rights. And where human rights and the freedoms of people are being restricted in any part of the world, we've got a duty to speak out. I think President Karzai knows that this is an issue that concerns people.
This is a point not just being expressed with Tirana Wafi. All the international human rights groups on the eve of the London conference are saying you're talking about reintegrating Taliban fighters. You're talking about talking to the Taliban. They don't have any guarantees yet that women's freedoms and social freedoms will be protected. What can you say to them?
They're not coming to take over government against the Afghan constitution.
But they will be part of your government?
They will be part of the democratic process.
If we're talking about the Taliban, we're talking in some cases about mercenaries who are paid. We're talking about people that have got local grievances that may be addressed another way. And we're talking about people who are ideologically committed to violent extremism in a perverted view of what is a great faith, the Islamic faith. And it's detaching those people who are not violently committed to the ideology that we're talking about here. If we can detach the others, and then persuade them that they should be part of the democratic process, that they renounce violence, and that there is a future for them only as part of the democratic process. That, I think, is what President Karzai is talking about. And so when we talk loosely about the Taliban, we're talking about people who sometimes are associated with them, but have got no ideological long-term desire to be part of that, and we are trying to detach them away. That's the point.
But for the moment, military commanders on the ground are talking about months of fighting to try to turn the tide in this war. Julie Cobb, you have a question. I believe you're very much involved in the consequences of this war.
Yeah, I'm a student teacher and I work in a school near RAF Lynham, and obviously we experience the repatriations fairly frequently. Sometimes they happen every day. And the children that I teach, I always say to them, make sure you pay your respects as you're walking through the town. And they are asking me constantly, why is this happening? Why are these soldiers being killed? Why do they, why does this have to happen to us? Can't we come back? And you don't have to see the looks on their faces every single day like I have to. So, Mr. Brown, I basically want to know, why can't we just pull out now?
First of all, I want to say that the soldiers and the families, we owe them a huge debt of gratitude. We've got brave, courageous, dedicated professional people risking their lives and in some cases losing their lives in Afghanistan. But the reason, and I've got to think of why we're in Afghanistan every time I see that or write to a family where there's been a bereavement or hear of someone who's been very badly injured in Afghanistan. And you've got to ask yourself the question all the time, is this the right thing for a country like ours to do? And my answer has got to be yes, because the security of our country and every country depends on our ability to deal with a terrorist threat. And we know that the terrorist threat is on the Afghan-Pakistan border, where Al-Qaeda have been very strong. And we know over the last 10 years about 3/4 of terrorist plots have started not in London or in the rest of Europe, but started from the Pakistan border areas. And the best way to protect ourselves against that security threat is to make sure that Al-Qaeda is weakened and that the Taliban don't return to power in Afghanistan. So it is about the security of the young children that you're talking about. And it is a far distance away, but the security and protection of them and our country begins by dealing with the threat that exists in Pakistan and Afghanistan.
Julie?
Yeah, I appreciate that, but I just think it will have a long-term effect on their education and their well-being, because you can tell at school, and I can tell every single day, how they are coping, especially those ones whose families are out in Afghanistan and they don't know if they're going to see their mums or their dads again. So I think long-term, it will affect them.
Edmund Nicholson, let me take a question to Edmund Nicholson. London School of Economics.
But Prime Minister, I do understand that we have to have a clear strategy, and I'm wondering, you have offered a long-term commitment to Afghanistan from Britain, but what are the terms of that commitment? What does that commitment really mean for this country in the long term?
It means that we want to train up Afghan police and army so that they are in a position to take over from us in protecting the security of the country. At the moment, there are about 90,000 Afghan police. At the moment, there's about 90,000 Afghan army. We will raise, with President Karzai, the number of Afghan armed forces to about 175,000 in the next year or so. By 2011. We'll raise the number of police, so there'll be about 300,000 police and armed forces. At that point, Afghan forces are more able to take security control of their country, and our forces, which are 10,000, 9,500, plus some others in Afghanistan, these numbers can start to come down. So it's not a plan for protecting the status quo. It's a plan for growing the Afghan forces so they can take security control of their country gradually, and we can reduce our forces over time.
Mr. Khazai?